have done before, I'm going to get your attention back up here at the front of the room, please. So, as we've done before, we'd love to hear some thoughts from your small group conversations here, either questions that you continue to sit with, or comments or lessons that you're hearing. So who would like to start us off and tell us what you're talking about at this point? Where you're going to dinner, what kind of cocktail you're going to order, how you're going to implement your MP3 plan, anything's relevant. Liza, please.
Just get the conversation started. Just for the question about ways to communicate, like what existing mechanisms exist for communicating and what additional mechanisms may be needed. What in our particular situation, in addition to the 7 stakeholder listening sessions that we had, which were facilitated, during those we had note takers, professional note takers that came with the facilitator, and we also had worksheets kind of like this, and we asked for individuals to turn those in. You didn't have to put your name on it. We had a sign-in sheet if they wanted to get notes from the meeting that they could put their email address. But then we also had a dedicated email address at work, so it was Pollinator Protection at vdex.virginia.gov, so you could send in comments that way, or regular mail. And so it gave people a lot of different options. And then we also provided my phone number and our state apiarist if somebody just felt better just talking to somebody on the phone. So we provide, tried to provide, a mechanism of ways for folks to communicate.
Great. Thanks. Other questions or ideas coming up in this conversation? All right. Oh, we got one more. Thank you.
So, because I know I have heard some folks talk about trying to, different listening sessions, and I do like the idea of doing them around the state, because I have heard from some beekeepers when they have to drive clear across the state just to the capital, it's either too expensive, too time consuming. So when you can, especially our bigger states, Texas, even Ohio, have those meetings around the state, so it gives an opportunity for different people to attend, as opposed to everyone always having to say, drive to Cleveland or drive to the capital city or wherever, because you'll reach more people.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, I'm going to invite our last speaker up, and we're sort of getting to the end of our process as well and starting to focus in on how you're going to evaluate and measure things. And we have Jack Peterson with us, the Associate Director of Arizona Department of Ag. And Jack grew up in Minnesota working on a family farm, has a BS in ag engineering from North Dakota State University, and over 30 years of pesticide-related experience working in North Dakota before he moved to Arizona in 1994.
Yeah.
And he was also a part of the team that pulled together the whole symposium. So thanks, Jack.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Oh,
where am I? Here I am. There we go. Perfect.
you got it. Sorry. Thanks.
Well, let's see. I'm the last one for the day. That's a good thing, right? Too bad I'm last, because it's really going to suck. But you get what you pay for. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about our plan, and I have to set it up here. And I chose this slide scheme because I usually, I like to do bright slides and a lot of animation, but I was trying to be professional here. I've failed so far, so let's continue on the roll. So this is truly just about, where's your, There I got it. Okay, set up. Did it twirl in or anything? Yeah, see, okay. There's my animation. Wasn't that awesome? Okay. Just to set up Arizona before I get into the plan. One thing that hasn't been talked about at all is Africanized bees. Africanized bees is an important subject in our state. Because of Africanized bees, people don't think bees are quite as wonderful, perhaps, as they do in the rest of the country. A lot of the cities have outlawed the raising of bees within city limits. When you have bees, as a beekeeper, you don't mind Africanized bees to an extent because they produce great honey. But you have to keep requeening because they get really nasty. I know I should look at my notes maybe. Got that one. We also have some angry beekeepers. And this is a long-standing anger. And the reason we've got angry beekeepers was back in '93, they demanded that they be deregulated. They didn't want to have anything to do with government whatsoever. We used to have the apiary registration and all that kind of stuff. They were completely deregulated. We want nothing to do with government. Leave us alone. So they did. The next year they came in and they passed a law that said, okay, this is how we're going to deal with this issue that we're here talking about today, pesticides and bees. And the law basically said, as a beekeeper, you have to get permission from the landowner. Then once you notify the landowner, then the landowner is supposed to notify you before you apply a pesticide that is of concern to bees. They didn't like that. And there's no teeth in that law, so does anybody use it? Give you a guess. No. So nobody's using that. In Arizona, just kind of the setup again, we do not have a lot of bees. And why is that? We live in a desert. We do have some large beekeepers, and those are the ones that we've really had to our meetings, and they're very engaged and very professional and know what they're doing. We do have the northern part of the state. It's a higher climate, it's cooler and everything like that, but the beekeepers, from my understanding, there's still not enough water. Water is always the issue. One of the things I was interested in, the lady back there called Michelle, who I don't know, she said there's an organization in every state, and I want to talk to her about that. I know there's a Southern Arizona Beekeepers Association, but they aren't very organized. So there's my angry bird. Okay, this is Arizona. Because we live in a desert, there are pockets of agriculture. There's not agriculture everywhere. This kind of makes it look like we're agriculture everywhere, but we're not. But it's more through the kind of the center of the state, and then down in the southeast part of the state, it goes like the center and across all the way over to Yuma. Yuma is in this southwest corner, and that's agriculture all the time. And guess what? That agriculture is dependent upon bees, because we grow melons. But we also grow cotton. And in amongst the cotton, we grow melons. And that's really nice. Let's see. And then the other map is to show you that the fact that we have a lot of federal lands and tribal lands. And why is that important? Because as you go to try to get people to work together, and you say, okay, get off my land. And what do? They'll go down the road and they'll get on the federal lands. Hopefully if they're going on the tribal lands, they're asking first. I don't know if they do or not, but let's see. Anybody have a guess? That's an aerial applicator spraying at night. We have a lot of aerial applications that take place at night, which plays a big role in helping to protect bees. I'm glad you laughed. I thought that was really good. So now, we have drafted our plan. We've had our meetings. We've gone out. We've got it up on our website. This is. It's been said many times here that this is not the end of it. It is the beginning of it. This has to be a dynamic document. And the bee complaint thing, although I don't like it, I think I'm going to add it to our plan, just so there is a mechanism. So if there is somebody that wants to report a bee kill or whatever, they can do it without a concern that we're going to come out and do an investigation on them, because then they're concerned about getting kicked off their land. The plan is basically just to draw attention to the issue, get people differing perspectives on it. We met, and I have to say, we started out as a small group, and I learned that at one of the meetings, because I think it was Colorado held a meeting, and they said, we're going to have this bee meeting, everybody show up. And they did, including the people from New York City. No, I don't know where they're from, but they were from the East Coast somewhere, and they just came in there to create havoc. They weren't there to help with a plan. They were there just to make a mess. And so we made the decision in our state, when we do our plan, we're going to start with a smaller group and have a discussion with those that are truly involved in the issue, the beekeepers and the agriculture operators, both applicators, sellers, and PCAs, The one thing you gotta do is you have to work pretty hard. You gotta get Beavis and Butthead to show up. Because if Beavis and Butthead don't show up, you all just go sing Kumbaya and we go home and we hug each other and think the world is great. And you need to get somebody there who's finally gonna say, those stinking bees. And then you gotta get some beekeeper to say, well, those darn aerial applicators. And then you know, the big help for us was we actually had the growers there too, and the growers said, you know what? I grow melons. Are melons dependent upon bees? They are. And he said, so when you affect those bees, you affect my crop. You affect my crop, it affects my bottom line. So let's sit down and let's figure this out. So it was a great meeting. All right. So moving forward, you know, this is all about 5 minutes. Oh, good. I'll be done way before then. I'm on a roll. How do we measure success? We don't have a mechanism in our plan for measuring success yet. We don't know what we're going to do. However, at the last meeting, we got a new director, Director Killian, and he came in and when I was done getting up there and doing my normal stuff, somebody said, well, how are, you know, and what I'm talking about is people using common courtesy and common sense and dealing with each other on a professional level. And he says, how are you going to make people do that? Not Marcus isn't saying that, but the people, how are you going to make people do that? And I said, we just got to keep talking to each other, everything like that. How are you going to make people do that? And Mark said, you know what? We're gonna set up a bee advisory committee. And that, in my mind, will be a measure of success because that is, again, a mechanism for people to get together to talk about issues. And if there are problems out in the field, I think they will come up with this. Mark is not looking at this as just a pesticide plan. He's looking at this as a much broader plan at bee health. And so I think it's a good thing for the state of Arizona. You know, right now we're dealing with just the managed bees because we don't have bees in cities. We don't have many hobbyists. I think surveying is going to be our biggest tool at this point in time, just trying to reach out to some of those beekeepers. And we have a beekeeper in our agency who's been a huge help. Brett, you know Mike. Brett Cameron, yeah, been around forever. And so he's kind of our gateway into the beekeeping community. You know, the survey, you're going to look at incidents, you know, and I think they talked about that earlier. You got to use caution if you look at incidents. That may be a proof that your plan is actually working because people are actually starting to report. Or if you're doing residue testing, you know, everybody's talked about that too. You're finding all kinds of stuff in the hives. Are you going to just continue to find stuff? So is that really showing you something? But are there changes that are being implemented? Are people saying they're communicating more? You know, maybe is there a customer satisfaction survey? Are people actually saying, you know what, I think this is, the beekeepers and the aerial applicators seem to be working together better. Use pattern changes, increased outreach as an agency, you know, we need to continue to do this. Every year when we do our pesticide training, we talk about this. Mapping in our state, not going to happen. Remember what I said earlier? Not in a million years. What's the honey production like? What are the bee counts like? So as the manager of this plan, because people have asked where do you get the money, let's see, I get paid every day so I can write the plan, I get paid every day so I can implement the plan, and I get paid every day so I can go and talk about the plan. So there you go, you don't have to worry about money, here we are. But it is a live breathing document that you have to continue to look at and continue to change as you find new solutions to your problem. So that's it. Thank you. There won't be, there never are. Oh, shoot. She must be a Canadian.
So we are going to hand you a mic because we're recording it. So.
Oh, so I gotta watch this thing.
What?
Careful.
It's okay. So I was just curious, you've heard from a couple of speakers before that when they started implementing or designing their MP3s, they didn't necessarily have a protection goal in mind. There wasn't necessarily an issue that they were trying to solve. This is more about being proactive. It sounds like you have some political differences in Arizona versus other parts of the country, maybe with beekeepers being deregulated, and I'd love to know more about that over a beer. But I guess, what was the protection goal?
I don't drink. That was a joke.
What was the protection goal? And you know, what was the issue you were trying to solve? Or was this just an exercise in proactivity?
From a bee kill standpoint, as has been said many times here, we have not had the bee issues like everybody said, but I think we need to find out. I think that's why I want to put that Michelle document in, just so we can get complaints, if there are complaints, put in so we know for sure. Our goal was our plan was driven by the Arizona Cotton Growers Association, because the National Cotton Council said, hey, this is something you got to do. And I'd been in the queue with everything on it, but they put the real rush on it to get it done. Yeah.
Hi, Dick Rogers from Bear in North Carolina.
Hi, Dick.
And Maria doesn't sound Canadian to me. I sound Canadian. I managed bees in Yuma for over a year. And you're right, Yuma, there's a lot of agriculture. It's agriculture year-round. I think it's a great example of having an MP3, but also establishing that you don't have a problem in that environment. Because I didn't have a problem either. And so I'm wondering, there's aerial applications all the time, everywhere, ground applications, different crops.
Yeah.
The worst problem was 120 Fahrenheit, things like that. So it'd be good to establish a baseline for what works and then apply the MP3 to see if anything improves.
We're actually going to Yuma next month just to talk to a really small group to talk about, are they doing something differently down there? In Arizona, the PCA, Pest Control Advisor, plays a big role. He's a guy that makes a recommendation on what they're going to apply, whatever. He plays a big role in not only getting the crop treated, but also in helping to ensure the bees are protected. He's just informing people.
You have a great tan.
That's because I'm from Arizona.
I'm wondering who created your survey and how was it distributed?
We have not done a survey. I said that's what we're going to do. That's the only thing I can see at this point as a mechanism to try to see if the plan is doing anything.
Do you know who will create it? Are you looking at someone?
Of course, we'll do the drafting, but you send it out to people. People review it, give your feedback, you change it, everything like that. So nothing's done in a vacuum, but it will be me who will draft it.
Other questions for Jack or the evaluation?
Hi, I'm Fred Strathmore. I'm from Pennsylvania.
Hi.
So I've come from the private side to the public side just recently. My question is, how are we funding all this? So it's good to say that you're going to do all the work and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. But the reality of it is, when you get the plan, who's taking it forward? How are we going to pay for it? I'm a deputy secretary now, so I'm in the midst of how do I fund this? So that's my question, not only to you, but Virginia or Michigan or anybody else in the room. If there's somebody else that can kind of shed some light on that process.
It's a finger in a dike.
Understood.
I mean, that's what it is. And this is a higher priority to get things done than other things. And so now, and so we've got to get it done. I don't know where we're good. Oh, Carrie's got money? Oh. It honestly, that's what it is it's like the squish ball, you squeeze it here and this part goes out there, but you try to get it all done. I'm uncovered, I can work 100 hours a week. It's great. I mean,
I get that. Yeah, my concern is going forward.
well, and to me, we are the mechanism to make the communication work. Ultimately, the plan has to work through the growers and the beekeepers. We can't drive that. We can't, to me, as a government agency, we can't drive common sense. They need to work it out with each other.
And that's coming from ex-interim director Peterson. So he was in your shoes before. Or the regulator formerly known as Jack. I will address the speaker as such. When we all conceived of these, managed pollen, a lot of thought went into the guidance. And the main focus of these managed pollinator protection plans, we included managed so we could actually develop measures that were achievable. But the main focus was to reduce pesticide exposure, whether it's acute or chronic, to manage pollinators. So our goal with these plans is to reduce pesticide exposure. You can capture any of the other 5 pillars of honeybee health if you use USDA's guidance, but our goal is to reduce pesticide exposure and measure that exposure is reduced. You don't see it a lot, but Jack had residue testing up there. Not everybody can afford residue testing, but it gives us a baseline, whether it's pollen, whether it's honey. Our goal is to reduce that pesticide exposure, and these plans and all the objective measures that are around the plans are to measure if we're affecting cultural practices or communication, but the main goal is reduce pesticide exposure, and measure if that pesticide exposure is reduced to whether the colonies recover or not. We're taking the pesticide piece out of the equation. If we do, we may or may not need label language from the get-go as a pesticide regulator. Sorry, I'm rambling on now. But I was a fan of enforceable label language and mandatory plans. People were there. We had that showdown. Now we're not there anymore, and I think I'm glad I lost that battle. But this is sort of to demonstrate that label language is not necessary. And ag entities have an opportunity to demonstrate that label language isn't necessary. We're funding it out of our pesticide program. Our pesticide programs are partially funded from EPA, whether they give us an opportunity to be one of our work plan. They did give us an opportunity to have this be part of our work plan for those federal funds, but not everybody's making that choice. It's sort of ad hoc. Liza's well aware. There's lots of opportunity to do more with less. I did have a question, Jack, but I lost it in that ramble.
It was great.
Just to answer for Virginia, yeah, all right, no. We have a pesticide control fund. We are all non-general revenue, so we're all fee-based, and I'm fortunate in that we're able to pay all the expenses, whatever they may be at the end of the day when we're done, through the Office of Pesticide Services. Yes, it's all pesticide fees. That would be for product registration, business licensing, certification. The way we have a Pesticide Control Act grant fund that can only be used for furtherance of the act and regulation, so we don't have to give the money back at the end of the year or anything else. So as long as we use that, and so we're able to use that.
Okay, so we're gonna let you guys take a stab at a few more questions and conversation before we wrap up. So we do have a few questions prompted here for you, again, on this topic. And I think Jack's conversation got to that point. It's, figuring out what you want to measure is going to depend on what you've got in the plan. It's also going to depend on how you think you can collect the data. So there's some questions here for you to look at, and I think question number letter C is really what barriers might exist. So thinking through those barriers up front, anytime you're going to implement measures, you're going to want to collect data. If you can't collect the data, you probably shouldn't have that measure because that's going to be problematic. And also understanding where there might be some baseline data for some of the things that are going to be important to you already, and to understand what that baseline data looks like. So take a look at some of these questions, have some conversations amongst yourselves, and we'll have some call outs back out before we wrap up. Thanks.
Yeah.